welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Hollis. How you doing?
All right. Today, this is a very special episode. This is our newest film to date.
This is the film that is still in the theaters.
Yes.
Or is
it? Still in the theaters /
doesn't mean anything
appearing
anymore?
on Blu-ray tomorrow or whatever.
Right.
The gap is so tiny between now when it's released in theaters, when it streams, and then when it's on home video or home disc. It's ridiculous how short that time span is now.
Yeah, if you get stuck in traffic on the way to the theater, you can pick up the DVD.
By the way, that film is The Holdovers.
Oh, yeah, The Holdovers.
You know what? How new can it be? It's not even from this year. It is a 2023 film. We are in 2024 now. It was a perfect film to watch at the time we watched it because it's set in Christmas of 1970 and a little bit at the end of January 1971. But it is a Christmas time movie. It is directed by Alexander Payne. Are you familiar with his work, Dave?
I didn't see Election. I didn't see Sideways.
Oh, I love Election. I love Sideways. I loved The Descendants with George Clooney. I think his first film was Citizen Ruth. He has a wonderful kind of black comedy vibe to him. And he really specializes in smart, quirky comedies with enough drama in them to ground everything. He worked with Paul Giamatti, who stars in this film, previously in Sideways. So it's them coming together again, which is a winning combination. This film was written by David Hemmingson, who started life as a lawyer. He later became a sitcom writer and executive producer of a number of sitcoms. And he actually wrote The Holdovers as the pilot script for a series. And Alexander Payne wanted to set a film in a prep school like this. And so he contacted him. And David Hemmingson adapted his pilot script into a full-length feature for Alexander Payne to direct. The results are very impressive. I loved this film. How did you feel?
I loved it too. And I have to say, like the thing you just said about how Payne does this thing where he takes dramatic content and mixes it with comedy. It took me 50 years to learn how to fully enjoy a film like that. If you showed me this film in my 20s and told me it was a comedy, I would watch it and say, how was that a comedy? There were no jokes. No one got kicked in the nuts. Like, that's where my head was at for a really long time, which is a shame.
That's so funny, too, knowing you as well as I do and knowing the depth of you and all the conversations we would have about movies, which made me want to do this podcast with you, where I was like, holy shit, we should just talk about movies. It's crazy to me to think of a primordial sludge, Dave, with regard to cinema, where you were just like, hey, like you were expecting a long America's Funniest Home Videos episode as a comedy. Like,
Primordial Sludge Dave is the right Paul Hunnam style reference to use because I'm a product of an evolution that I'm kind of proud of. It took me a while and a lot of work to get where I'm at. And back then, I was like, Meatballs, that's a comedy. Now I'm like, oh, I see. Not every joke hits you over the head.
You were more sometimes of a gonzo comedy school kind of guy.
I guess so.
Just all the bully boys of SNL, the early years. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah, Chevy Chase and
Yeah, I got news for you, Dave. Any man worth a damn is the result of an evolution. The longer I live, the more I realize that just guys do not come out of the womb
and yet
as their best self.
It seems many women do.
Yes.
I mean, we shouldn't even draw a differentiation, but that's how it feels.
That's how it is.
To me.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yes, all that said.
We need a general idea of what happens in this movie.
Okay.
And I'll say this, a lot happens in this movie.
The beauty of this movie is nothing happens and everything happens simultaneously. Everything that happens in this movie seems surprising, yet inevitable. So this film, The Holdovers, is set in a New England prep school founded in, I believe, 1797, named Barton. It is a fictional school, but it's based on so many real schools. And you can tell the writer was a product of one of those schools growing up. The basic plot of the film, there's a faculty member of this school named Paul Hunnam. He is a classics professor who none of the students like, none of the faculty likes, and his former student, who is now in charge of the school, does not like.
He's like a dean or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
He rubs everyone the wrong way. He has a chip on his shoulder. He's anti-rich kid entitlement, which is a funny way to feel for a guy who is a teacher at this kind of school, because all they have is entitled rich kid students.
To a fault, he has
Yes.
a chip on his shoulder. To a fault, he is grumpy. Yeah.
He's not living his best life.
He's not. He's not
Yeah.
being a great teacher.
No, he's not reaching the kids as he should.
Mhm.
It's very adversarial. So anyway, he has a nickname Walleye because he has a wandering eye and both of his eyes are sort of bugged out. And I think they might have done something to Paul Giamatti's eyes to give him more of an effect like that, the way they shot, either in post or they put like devices on him, because he really looks that way.
There's a contact lens wrangler in the credits.
Is there really?
There really is.
I love it. I love it. There was some good old school practical effects.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So this character, who is not meant really for anything social, is tasked with being in charge of the quote unquote holdovers, which are students who cannot go home over the Christmas holiday break because their families are busy or far away or don't want them.
Or don't love them.
Yeah, don't love them enough. I think there's 5 students to begin with. He is in charge of it because a despicable faculty member ditches the assignment by saying his mother has lupus, which she does not. And so it falls to Paul Hunnam as a sort of punishment, because we learn later he failed a rich kid student whose father gave them massive donations.
One of the classic, like, his dad gave us a gymnasium, we put his name on it, we're going to push his son through. And Professor Hunnam says, absolutely not.
Yeah. One of the quotes, if you've only seen the trailer for the film, is Paul Giamatti very emphatically stating, our one purpose is to produce men of good character. And he lives it. And he doesn't give a shit who your daddy is.
I like that about him.
I love that about him.
Yeah.
I'm one of these guys, I come to the film and I'm like, okay, everyone else needs to change. He doesn't need to change.
Right. Yeah.
What are you doing in a school like that if you're not doing that, you know?
Well, that's why now, these days, we're watching the news and we're like, this guy went to Harvard? This guy went to Harvard?
Yeah.
This guy went to Harvard? It's like, these dudes are all getting pushed through.
Yeah, they are. They're not smarter. They're just connected. That is the basic premise, is this despised teacher in charge of a small group of students over the holiday break. The only other characters that are with him, the lead cook, who just lost her son in Vietnam, killed in action, and he also went to the school. Her name is Mary Lamb, and she is fantastic. She's played by Davine Joy Randolph. I loved her from Only Murders in the Building. That's how I know her. And also from a couple of other films, like straight up comedy films. She's good in everything. Anyway, there are 5 students to begin with. The main holdover, a character named Angus Tully, played by Dominic Sessa, who is wonderful. 4 of them take off on an adventure with one of the students who puts them all up to go skiing.
His dad's a rich industrialist, or, works for the Rand Corporation or something.
Who arrives on helicopter.
He shows up, he lands like in the school baseball field with a helicopter and whisks the kids away. Unfortunately, Angus Tully's parents cannot be reached. He is left behind.
But you get the impression that his parents probably wouldn't have said yes anyway.
You get the impression that his parents heard the phone ringing and didn't pick it up.
Yeah. And Angus Tully is there, we should say, because the plan was for him and his mother and stepdad to go to St. Kitts, a wonderful tropical getaway during this cold New England winter. And instead, he gets a phone call at the very last minute saying that they're going to take sort of an extended honeymoon for themselves And he's like, you got married 5 months ago. You had 5 months to do this. Why are you shitting on my vacation?
This call comes while he's standing outside with a suitcase. It could
Hmm.
not be more last minute. And he says things to his mother that no mother should not respond properly. He says, "Please, mom, don't do this to me." And she basically says, like, "I got to choose my new boyfriend over you or my new husband over you.
She
Bye."
chooses. We learn later that the mother has some reasons that you can kind of piece together why she wants a moment for herself and a different life for herself. And you get the sense also that Angus Tully is a problem child. He has been shuttled from school to school to school. This is kind of his last school. After this, he's going to go to military academy if he messes up one more time.
And you do
And
not want to go to military academy when there's currently a war. And
right.
there is currently a war.
And his character was left back at least once, maybe two times, he alludes to. So he's a little bit older than his grade would denote. Also, he's there with his, like you say, with his suitcase, and I believe in his jacket. And he's been making fun of the school bully, who is his main antagonist, and being like, no one wants you there. And now he learns he's going to be a holdover as well.
They do a
So,
great job of having him becoming a holdover being a real kick in the teeth.
yes, this is it. We have our main holdovers. After a while, we're left with the nucleus of Professor Hunnam, Tully, all the students and faculty refer to each other by their last names, Mary, who is the cook, and to a lesser degree, the janitor, who has a few lines but seems like a
I
very
think
sweet person.
Danny is
Danny.
I believe is the janitor. That's 4 people, and that's it. And this school is massive, and it's winter. You got like a Shining feel.
Yes. As a viewer, you're going to draw on certain influences that you can't escape. From a film aspect, it's sort of Dead Poet Society mixed with The Shining. From a book aspect, it's kind of, there's elements of The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. There's elements of A Separate Peace by John Knowles. These kind of coming of age, kind of schoolboys in disgrace, learning the politics of life, the social games you have to play.
When you said coming of age, something clicked in my head, and that people throw that term around, and it's usually right. I mean, you're talking about a portion of people's life where they, but you don't give much thought to that term, coming of age. Angus Tully is a great example of a coming of age character because this movie starts with what you might call a snotty-nosed brat. I hear parents occasionally say about their younger children, like, yeah, she just woke up one morning and she seemed like a year older. It happened all at once. This winter break, I would say Angus Tully ages 2 or 3 years in maturity. It is truly a coming of age story. He is a
Mhm.
child. He is young when this movie starts. And he is not an adult fully, but he is much older when the movie ends.
Also,
Um,
he's very angry when the movie starts. There's a rage inside of him that is palpable
he has a great, like, sort of sneer on his face all the time in the
all the
beginning.
time.
And I'm like, this guy's good. It's not over the top. He does a real nice
Hmm.
job of looking fed up with the world.
Yeah, and it's combative. Everything is combat. His
Mhm.
every interaction with his fellow students, he talks back to the authority figures. He
Mhm.
but we learned something very important, and this is the genius of a good script and a good director. We learn by seeing that he gets the best grades in that class, the toughest class on campus. Professor Hunnam is handing out their midterms or whatever,
It's worth
and
mentioning that while he's handing out the midterms, he's whistling The Ride of the Valkyries.
Valkyries.
That
It's
and now
perfect.
I can say I get why these movies are comedies.
Yeah,
That was a beautiful scene.
a
He's
lovely enhancement.
whistling the ride, the ba ba da
Hmm.
da da ba. So yeah, he hands out these grades.
F, D, C minus, F, D, and then we see Angus, and he either gets a B or a B plus,
I think it's a
something
B plus. Yeah.
which Paul Hunnam, it's maybe the first B plus he ever gave his entire life since he started teaching in the 60s or whatever.
Right. Right.
And it's something that isn't commented upon, but Tully, the anger and the kind of the way he's drawn in the beginning, he gets the B plus, it's put on his desk, he looks at it, he immediately puts a book over it. And remember our talk, Dave, about high school and how hard it is and you want to be cool. He
Mm,
hides how smart he is. It's something that
mhm.
makes him stick out. It's something that battles with his tough guy image. It battles with his I don't give a fuck attitude. He can't
Mhm.
help it. He's smart and he shows
It's
it
not
on
it's
tests.
not it's not cool to be smart,
No.
and that's the way and I remember saying it, I think it was, Wonder Boys, I remember saying it, like,
Mhm.
"Don't hide it."
Also, keep in mind, high school is not forever. It is
Yeah,
a launching point. College is not forever. They're launching points. The real
yeah.
world is going to want you smarter, and you're going
Mhm.
to want to be smarter in the real world.
You'll be
So
happier, yeah.
you'll be so much happier.
He can't control like, he's going to answer the questions in a smart manner. He's not that much hiding how smart he is. So and he
Mhm.
wants to do well in school. So, when no one's looking, he's a better person, which is also shown in the middle of the night when he hears his roommate crying.
You're
Oh,
absolutely right. That's a great moment. Just finishing up the coming of age part, we did Breaking Away. There's something that that movie handles so beautifully, which is the camaraderie of these friends. This almost celebrates the opposite of that. This is kind of like before you found your tribe. This is searching for who you are and who you connect with. And you're thrown together with guys
yeah.
you would never associate with outside of a bus stop shelter. Like, there's nothing connecting these guys at all.
You're, like, bouncing off of them. You're like, "Mean guy, nice guy, worth 10, 20 times as much as me."
Yeah.
Uh, there's 0 bond.
So when we meet, let's call him Walleye, because that's what the students call him, or Professor Hunnam. He's this bug eyed character. No one likes him. But when we first meet him, really, and we see what he's about, truly by himself, he's happy. He's grading papers, smoking his pipe,
Mhm.
and almost chuckling to himself as he crossed, no, you idiot. Like,
Yeah, and he's doing it like an artist. He's
he
doing it like
is
painting, like he's painting something.
Picasso.
He's like,
Yeah.
"D minus."
Yeah, reveling in his authority. But as we
Mhm.
said, he thinks he's happy. He's not happy. He's not living his best life. There's a journey ahead of him he's ignorant of. The genius of this movie is showing us that journey for him and Tully and taking it together. So, yeah, he's very happy in the beginning as this horrible, horrible person. Speaking of beginning, the beginning of this film, I don't know if you were making yourself microwave popcorn or
No,
if you were
no,
there.
the beginning of this
Oh,
film was
it uses the old Universal logo to set the tone, like as if
with
you're
clicks and
watching
scratches over it.
clicks and scratches. Likewise, the old R motion picture code rating,
Mhm.
even Focus Features and Miramax, they remade those logos to appear like they would have existed. As a logo guy, Dave,
They
how
used
much did you love
retro
it?
animation on the first logo. They used an old Miramax logo. I thought it was gonna be one of those movies that takes place in the '70s. Actually, it takes place in '70, which
Right.
the
Which
way
is the 60s.
I
Yeah.
calculate decades as the 1970 is the late '60s. But anyway,
Hmm.
I thought it was going to be like one of those movies that takes place in the '70s, which I like. I'm like, oh, cool, the cars, the clothes, and stuff. I'm gonna like that. What I didn't realize is it was more than that. It was like someone made a movie called The Holdovers, and it didn't get released and wound up on a shelf.
Yeah,
It really felt like it was made in the '70s.
it has that feel.
Because of those logos you're talking about now in the introduction and
Hmm.
stuff, there's no question that this is the point.
Yes, great way to put you in the right frame of mind for the film and not mess with anything because there's nothing anachronistic before you start the film. But also, 10, 15 years from now, the uninitiated, they don't always show you the year of these things. I could see
Mhm.
some kid 15 years from now, oh, the holdovers, what's this? And thinking it was from that era.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it would take a while. Like, they'd have to get on the internet and be like, "Wait a minute, Paul Giamatti was in movies in 2024."
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, and speaking of which, the tone of this film is just pitch perfect. This would be a perfect double feature partner for Rushmore or The Wonder Boys, or
Mhm,
Harold and
mhm,
Maude, or Alexander
mhm.
Payne's Sideways. Like just beautifully paced, somber, yet comfortable. If you're depressed, it's the perfect film for you. If you're feeling good about things, it's the perfect film for you. Like the tone of this film is so comfortable.
Yeah, it's got, like, the perfect amount of melancholy.
Yeah.
It really does, and like I was saying earlier, like, I'm old enough now that I'm like, "Ah, that feels nice."
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the holdovers, the group of young men right before it just contracts down to Tully by himself. We get a little more time with the bully who's named Kuntz. And Kuntz has had everything handed to him. He is the ultimate example of the student that drives Walleye crazy, which is this entitled kid who's dumb as a stump and just
Mm.
is going to get passed along, and at a certain age will get a cushy job in his father's firm and will later help run the world into the ground. There's a jock character who again has everything easy his whole life. He's the one whose father arrives on a helicopter.
That
He's
guy has a little kindness in him. I mean,
he
he
seems
does
like a
invite
good
the kids
guy.
with him. Yeah, he does seem like a good
Well,
guy,
there's
yeah.
two ways you can be when you have everything handed to you, and you're beautiful. Like he's genetically
Yeah,
like
he's
gorgeous. He's
gorgeous.
a
He looks rid
king
almost
athlete.
almost ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah. So you can either be like, a bully like Kuntz and be like, yeah, I deserve everything. Or you can be like, isn't life great?
He's grateful. That's all it
He's
is. He's
grateful.
grateful. His dad says yes to taking these kids. Guess why he's grateful? Because his dad's a good guy too.
Yeah, it's true.
He's one of those
Uh,
rare good guys with a helicopter.
yeah. And there's something subtle about parents that hangs over this whole thing.
Yeah, it's true.
We see it most in Tully, and we'll get towards that at the end. You get a sense of the other's parents even when they're absent. There's younger characters, two younger characters than the rest. One is a Mormon whose parents don't come for him. And one is he from Thailand?
Yi Jun Park is from Korea.
Yejun Park is from Korea, which is about as far from New England as you can get.
His name is Yi Jun. The actor's name is Jim Kaplan.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's Jim Kaplan playing
Oh,
Yi Jun Park.
oh, that's
Isn't
so
that awesome?
charming.
He was good. He was very
He
good.
was great.
Yeah, so his parents are too far away. He has the best excuse. I
He
believe his
does.
exact words are, "My parents said it's too expensive to bring me home."
Yeah. He's at this school only because his brothers went to this school and his
Mm,
parents want a better life for their kids. And they correctly see it as a launching pad for the American dream.
mm.
Everyone who graduates from this school, it seems, has a cushy life, but they're stuck holding over too. And there's a beautiful scene, which Dave brought up earlier, where we see the first soft side to Tully. Yi Jun wets the bed at night because he has a nightmare and he's homesick and he's crying, and it wakes up Tully, and he's so sweet to him.
Yeah, not only is he sweet because everyone else is asleep, he then reinforces that with, "Don't let the other guys hear you. Like, keep it down.
They'll make fun of you. They
I'll
won't.
help you clean up the sheets in the morning. I'll help you
Right.
with your bedding." I
I'm
identify with that scene, because I know what it's like to, lay in a bed that you wet, surrounded
mm,
by boys who you know are going to ridicule you when they find out.
oh my God, Dave, I'm so
Yeah, it's
sorry.
tough.
That's good. Yeah.
That's okay,
Well, you know what?
but
Yi Jun says something like, I don't have any friends here, until he goes, friends are overrated.
yeah.
The voice of experience.
Mm,
And you can tell a decision was made in Tully's past. Like, you know what?
I'm doing this
Eh,
alone.
yeah, every friend I make here is just turns out to be a monster. Or why make friends? This is my eighth school. I get
Yeah.
kicked out everywhere. And yet, he's a friend to this kid without knowing
Mm.
it.
He gets his Bill Murray on.
Yeah, he does. All roads lead back to meatballs with you. I love it. Look for the trippers.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
at one point, before the rest of the holdovers leave, they're having dinner.
Oh my god.
And the bully,
Hoots.
Kuntz, Walleye asks Mary, who's cooked this feast for them, if she wants to join them. She notices Kuntz make a face, and she's like, no thanks. And she goes into the kitchen. And he's like, what? She's doing a job.
And not doing it very well. This food sucks. That's
Yeah,
not
like
the
didn't we have
exact words.
we had
But
this for lunch and it wasn't good then.
yeah.
And Walleye explodes, and we see the good side of Walleye. We see
Mhm.
what's inside of him. He says something like, for most people, life is like a henhouse ladder, shitty and short. It's actually based on an old German expression, which was the title of an 84 book on German folklore. Life is like a chicken coop ladder. Because I went looking for like the origin of this because I loved it.
Shitty and short.
Shitty and
And
short
it's important that he prefaces it with for most people,
for most people.
not you, Kuntz.
No.
You have a long, clean, easy, you have an escalator.
He calls out the entitlement. You have no idea what this woman has been through. And because of your entitlement, you never will know.
We learn more and more and more. And we're like, my
Yep.
God, that freak out of his was absolutely warranted.
Absolutely. So let's get rid of these kids. The rich kid jock who has long hair and is having a battle of wills with his dad who wants him to cut it.
Oh, right. That's why he's a holdover.
That's
because
why
he
he's
refused
going
to
to be
cut
a
his hair.
holdover. But instead, the helicopter comes down. His dad takes all of them on a ski vacation. Walleye reached all of their parents except for Tully. All their parents were like, yeah, sure, send them. So they all take off, and it's just Tully and Hunnam and Mary. And we have our nucleus that's going to take us through the bulk of the film. There's so much to these characters. The depth of Walleye, the depth of Tully, and the fact that they don't show 90% of their true character to anyone around them. And then they're thrown together. And just because of how combative both of them are, they can't help but reveal things to each other. It's amazing the way they break down each other's defenses. They see a kindred spirit in each other, it seems to me. Opposite ends of the same, I don't know what, battle with life.
It's almost like it reminds me of that thing where two old guys fight in a movie. They're equally matched and they end up getting tired.
Right. They're
And
all
they
punched out.
they're all punched out and they eventually just have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Paul Giamatti, his character is an immovable wall of curmudgeonness. Angus Tully is an immovable wall of snotty noseness and angriness. And they're just going to butt heads until they both go, oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, tell me what your deal is.
Yeah.
It works really well.
It does. At first, when there's a whole group of guys, Walleye can keep Tully at a safe distance. He's just one of that group.
Yeah.
But once it's a one-on-one situation, there's no way for him not to be drawn in.
We've got ourselves an after-school special.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. We're going down this road.
Mm-hmm. We learn about the softer side of Walleye mostly through his interactions with Mary. When he's alone with her, he consoles her about her dead son. He commiserates with her about how lousy the students are. They talk about other faculty members and how, they're so stuck up or whatever. And later on, when more is revealed about Walleye's character, we see why. These are a couple of middle-class kids or lower middle-class kids toiling in the hoity-toity world of academia.
Yeah, in the shadow of millionaires and billionaires and entitled people.
Yeah. And so those two and Tully have so much in common that it's not surprising those are the three holdovers. They're holdovers in many ways. They're afterthoughts from their family. They're afterthoughts from the school. They're afterthoughts from their parents.
Mary is the best example of her lack of status.
There's a racial component to it as well.
Of course there is. Yeah. And you see it in Kuntz's eyes too. Like you're inviting her to sit down and eat with us.
That little racist fuck.
Do you not see what I see? Yeah. That kid's racist. Mm-hmm. Her lack of status has cost her the most. Her lack of status cost her son. Because if she could afford to keep her son in that school and he didn't join the army to take the weight off the cost, he'd be alive.
Yeah.
If they were rich, she'd have a son.
Mm-hmm.
Her son is gone because of her lack of status.
He couldn't afford college. The GI Bill was going to be his key to college.
Mom, when I come out, I'll have money for college.
Yeah.
But he didn't come out. And every single kid in that school doesn't have to go to Vietnam.
It's
Every
not even a
single one of
thought.
them.
Yeah.
And there's a black kid in the school, and he has to go.
Yeah. So Tully is very sad. He was going to have a dream vacation. Now he has nothing. So the first time that Walleye and Angus and Mary escape from the school is they go to a Christmas party thrown by the woman who baked the cookies for Professor Hunnam, who we think has a little crush on him.
Lydia, Miss Lydia.
Lydia. She is charming. She is sweet. She's good-natured. And she seems to get that Walleye is a good teacher and misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And she likes him. And a good person. And so Tully forces his way to the party. Hunnam doesn't want to go. At the party, Lydia and Walleye are having this wonderful conversation. It later turns out she's being kind.
It's not charity. She genuinely likes him.
No, she's just being friendly, because we see a guy come at the party, and when he arrives, she goes and kisses him, and it's clear that he's dating her. But I still put it to you, she was giving Hunnam enough signals that who knows if that guy who came to the party was her second choice. If he had closed the deal earlier or put himself in the arena.
I thought the same thing. This may be the guy, the
Lars and the Real Girl.
Thank you. The Eric of Lars.
Yeah.
The Eric of Lars and the Real Girl.
I can't have Lars, but I can't wait for this other guy.
I can't wait for you forever.
That's right.
So here I am with this guy.
He's Mr. Right Now.
Yeah, Mr. Right Now. Well, Mr. Right is a walleye curmudgeon who has a disease that makes him smell like fish.
Yes, who hasn't yet had his character arc. I don't know why they had to do this, but I guess it's an actor thing where it's almost like, what's in my character's fridge? Like there's this thing where his character, Walleye's character, smells like fish more and more towards the end of the day. Trimethylaminuria or something. His body can't break down trimethylene or something. It is an odd aspect to his character, but it's just one more thing that keeps him at arm's distance and is one more thing that can be made fun of by the kids or whatever. So anyway, Tully has a great time at this party. He is at first transfixed by a snow globe that catches his attention, and he's just kind of like losing himself in the party. He's then in the basement with a beautiful young lady.
Lydia's niece, named Elise. Hunnam says, Elise the niece. Elise the niece. I feel like Paul Giamatti said that while he was reading the script. And the director said, put that in.
It's a nice cadence.
Yeah.
And also rare, it's like, that's him in party mode. It's just dad jokes and kind of like, oh, this is how you are at a party. Like,
he's socially capable.
He is. He can do it.
He eases tension. He's good. Yeah, he can do it.
He can do it. So at one point, Mary kind of gets through to Walleye and tells him, you don't tell a kid you want to cut him loose. You don't tell a kid that he's an inconvenience on Christmas when he's alone from his family. You should make this a better holiday for him. And coming from Mary, he listens. And so he goes and gets a Christmas tree. He goes and gets presents for them. It turns out he has 50 copies of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius that he always gives as a gift. But he tries.
And he shares his Christmas cookies, which is particularly adorable. Yeah.
We feel like he's bridging the gap. And he says, he makes a blanket statement to Mary and Tully, if there's anything I can do to make this Christmas holiday break better for either of you, just say the word. Tully immediately jumps on him and says, I want to go to Boston. And Mary smiles and looks at him and is like,
you promised.
Gotcha. Yeah. And he's like, Boston? What's in Boston? He's such a brat because he doesn't even appreciate the tree that Walleye dragged in. He's like, and I want to see a real tree, not this ugly thing. You said you liked it. Like, it's this great, he's like wounded. He's like, I'm trying here. They end up going to Boston.
Mary jumps in. She says, like, you're dropping me off in Revere. Or I forget where, somewhere.
No, it's somewhere. I would recognize it, but it's I forget where it is. Mary has a sister who's pregnant, who is living just outside of Boston or on the way to Boston. And so we then cut to a car trip, the three of them in a car going to Boston.
We don't know how truly important it is to Tully that he gets to Boston.
Right.
We do not know how important it is that Mary Lamb gets to visit her sister in this
Yeah.
town on the outskirts of Boston. Both extremely important for them at this moment. And you won't find out until they make it to their destinations,
Hmm.
which is really well done.
Yeah. You know, Tully's a good kid. He helps Mary up with her packages. He helps her up the stairs to her sisters. And then we have Tully and this surrogate father figure, Walleye, and they go on their odyssey in Boston. And
Yeah,
for
he gets back in the car and you're like, okay, people, let me tell you about my best friend. Like it's on.
yeah,
This is it.
yeah,
Yeah. They drop Mary off at her sister's house. She begins unpacking, and there's this hat box that she's been coveting in earlier scenes in the film.
and she tells Tully, "Be careful with that box."
Yeah, she does. Yeah. We don't know what's in it. I thought it could be remains or
Or like,
um
yeah, personal effects of her son.
or like some uniform stuff or medals.
Right.
It's her son's baby clothes. And
Yeah.
her sister is very pregnant, due soon. She greets her sister and her sister's spouse. They put her in a bedroom and she begins unpacking these little tiny shoes and these little tiny socks in the room that will probably become the baby's room. She gets to move her thoughts from, at least for a moment, from her lost child to a child that's on the way.
It's a cycle of life. She gets to go
Yeah.
back to the beginning, find new life for her son's old clothes.
Hmm.
These little shoes are going to walk again. These little baby clothes are going to be useful.
Got to be a big deal when you're in that position.
Yeah.
So Tully and Hunnam dropping her off is a big deal. Getting her there is a big deal. She wouldn't have been there.
Especially since she had no plan to go anywhere. She was like, it's too soon after my son died. And this was the last place I saw him outside of dropping him at the bus to go to the army. So the memories of him are there and she wanted to be with him. But the best thing in the world was her getting away from there.
Yeah. And this threesome is they're helping each other. And that's
Yeah.
the first big help of one of the three. It's like, okay, you're being helped. You're in the right loving arms, doing the right things. Now let's move on to these two.
For the beginning of this Boston Odyssey, it just looks like the best field trip ever. Professor Hunnam is taking Tully through museums. They're going on university campuses. They're looking at books.
I would love to go to a museum with Paul Hunnam.
Oh my God, the things you
He's
see.
full of great information. He knows what to show you. He
Fantastic.
knows what it means.
It's so good. And then at one point, they go to the movies and they see a fantastic movie, Little Big Man, with Dustin Hoffman. I forget what he says, but he's just like, they're watching the movie and he leans over and he says something like, you know, this isn't just a good film. This is a fairly accurate depiction of life among the Cheyenne.
Right.
And someone hushes it. Someone's like, shh. And he goes, oh, shut your fucking mouth or whatever. He's like,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's just, no, he's great everywhere. You're getting nothing but information out of him.
Yeah.
And it's in this movie where Tully sneaks out and grabs a cab. He's caught by Walleye. We learn then Tully had said that his father was dead. He said that new guy isn't my dad. He's just my stepdad. Because Paul Hunnam is like, oh, you're trying to go. Of course we can see your dad. Of course we can go to a cemetery. The cab takes off and we slowly learn he's going to an asylum to see his dad. They get to the asylum. He sees his dad and his dad is very troubled. He's addled by medicine. He's addled by whatever.
Yeah, he's sort of unresponsive.
Yeah, he's really in a bad way.
And then they raise your hopes a little and dash him because he says, it's important that I say something to you.
And you think he's going to impart some fatherly emotion or wisdom.
Angus leans in and he says, I think they're putting something in my food, which is a classic paranoia thought. And Angus is crestfallen. He's crushed. And you can tell in his face, you can tell in Angus's face, he had hoped that there might be a breakthrough. Or maybe he's not as bad as they're telling me. This is why he's doing this behind everyone's back. It's why it's secret. It's why he was trying to make it an escape, because he's like, I want to go see for myself. He doesn't know this, but we know as 2024 people that his father actually may not be so bad. It could be all medication.
Yeah, well, you don't know back then. I suspect that there's electric shock that took away more and
That's
more of him,
mm,
given the time
mm,
frame. You know, there's a little bit of a
yeah.
cuckoo's nest aspect to the whole way the scene is shot, too.
Mm.
He's kind of directed around by this orderly. And you know what else, too, Dave? Here we are again, fathers and sons. It's a refrain on this podcast, whether we're talking about Ted Lasso or we're talking about Breaking Away, or it's just you and I just chatting as friends over the years. There's something about that dynamic that is a refrain among boys and men. And I doubt you ever truly escape it. There's a reason that lions in the jungle and silverback gorillas, they always have to leave. They have the right idea. Males of a certain age go off on their own. And maybe they should never see their families again. Maybe that's
Yeah.
the only way to do it. But it's a power dynamic that changes throughout your life if you're lucky enough to have a longer life with your father or son. But sometimes your father's robbed from you or your son is robbed from you. And you have those conversations still in your head that you wish you'd had. There's something inescapable about the father and son dynamic. There's also dynamics that work the other way. There's daddy's little girl and there's mama's little boy. And there's, you know, these things that happen. But there's something to this. And I think there's a reason it's a refrain.
In everything,
Yeah.
you know, Freud and Shakespeare. And it's
Hmm.
just, I think you couldn't make a film without accidentally
Yeah.
alluding to these connections. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And I wonder
Yeah.
how much of it is on the page and how
Mhm.
much of it is us viewing it through a certain prism that is
Or
inescapable.
imbuing it, yeah, putting it
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good point.
At one point in Boston, Professor Hunnam and Tully are walking through the snowy streets and they bump into a former classmate of Paul
Oh,
Hunnam's
yeah, I forgot about that scene.
when he was in Harvard. It's clear from the immediate interaction that Hunnam wishes they never bumped into each other.
Yeah.
And this guy immediately starts singing his own praises, having his wife sing his own praises about how well things are going for him. He turns it on Walleye. What's up with you? And he says it in a way
You
that
can
is
tell
almost,
it's not good-natured. You can
no,
tell.
it's almost the verbal equivalent of someone tucking $1 in the cup of a homeless guy. It's almost like, what's up with you? How are you?
Yeah,
It's this
and I
charity ask.
he at some point uses the term "landed on your feet," which is like, "Well, fuck
Yeah.
you." Yeah.
And Professor Hunnam says something like, good, good. I've been teaching and doing my, where are you? He's like, oh, I've been freelancing, doing here and there. Tully is intuitive and smart enough to tell from the way he's acting that he needs a little help. And he's like, oh, don't be modest, Uncle Paul. Tell him about
Tell him
your
about your
book.
book. Yeah.
And he's like, what? Your book? What is it? And he goes, you know, about that magic camera or whatever. And he's like, the camera obscura. Yes. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, tell him the title. And he
Yeah.
immediately comes at, they're a great team. Light and magic in the ancient world.
Yeah. It's good.
He went up just enough to be able to like smack this guy down enough to, he's now going to speak well of him.
And he
And
didn't
they,
get the satisfaction he wanted. He didn't get, "Oh,
yeah,
it's been tough, but I'm doing okay." Yeah,
no.
and if I tell that guy what I'm actually doing, he's gonna go around and tell everyone I failed.
Yeah. Well, Tully is like, what the fuck just happened? And he's like, Barton men don't lie? What was that?
That's the liquor store scene. That's when they
Yep.
push the door, the bell
Hmm.
rings, and I thought you said Barton men don't lie.
Right.
You just told a whole bundle of lies.
He
Okay.
breaks down how this guy was at Harvard with him, and one of his entitled classmates copied off of him, off of
Actual
Hunnam,
roommate.
roommate. They both got in trouble.
They both claim to have been the original author.
Right.
The person who was going to win that fight was the person with the higher status. It was, again, suffering because of status.
Yeah. And I could not help but play Monday morning quarterback on his past and be like, I can't believe that Hunnam didn't suggest, like, well, give us both an oral quiz. Or, you know what? Let's
Yeah.
sit down right now and we'll both rewrite our papers for you.
Maybe Hunnam was a little bit like Tully back then and was like, fine, fuck it.
Yeah, maybe he was
maybe,
beaten down by that point
yeah.
where
Yeah.
he was in a fuck it mood. At the end of this, they're like, now you can't tell anyone this. And he's like, no, Entre Nous. which
Yeah, which
is
is also a theme. Yeah.
yeah, which is, French for ourselves alone. It's just
Mm,
kept between us. Actually, like ancient French from like
mm,
1600s, and only these
yeah.
two smart guys would know it. But again, Tully's a good guy, Walleye's a good guy, and they just fucking click.
It's important to point out that Tully says, "So you got kicked out for plagiarism?" He goes, "No, I got kicked out because I hit him." You punched him? No, I hit him with my car. And and I think he says like how the guy was injured and was in a lot of pain, and that made him feel better. The whole time they're having this conversation, you kind of think they're alone, and that if there's anyone working in this store, they're probably in the back or something like that. But he turns to the guy standing there and he hands him the bag with the bottle in it, and he says, "Here you go, killer."
Yeah,
So
nothing is entre nous in this world. There's always
because
somebody watching.
because I like that guy that said, "Here you go, killer," I looked him up. They had a liquor store picked out and it fell through. The location team went looking in windows and they found this liquor store and they knocked on the door, and the owner of the liquor store was there, and he had an employee there, but the employee had COVID. He was like, "This film crew wants to come in and talk to us." And the guy with COVID said, "I'm going to go down to the basement. I don't want to be close to a bunch of people. I'm getting over COVID." Anyway, they're like, "We love your store. We want to shoot here." And the guy's like, "Oh, that sounds great. We can close one day. Is one day? Yeah." Alexander Payne says to the owner, "Hey, you want to be the guy? You want to be the guy who there's a line, you deliver a line?"
That's great.
And the owner says, "No, that should be Joe. That should be Joe downstairs.
Oh, wow.
He's been behind this cash register for 20 years. That should be him."
What a great owner.
And he says, "Well, bring him up." And he goes, "Oh, he's sick." He goes downstairs, he takes a picture of him and brings it up.
Oh,
He says, "Great, we'll use Joe, and he'll have a line, and it'll be great."
that's fantastic.
Isn't
Yeah.
that great?
9 out of 10 owners would be like, yeah, I'll take the line. It's
Sure.
my
Yeah.
store. Yeah, that's cool. So we're back at school after the Boston trip. Tully and Walleye had really been there for each other and grown close. We feel that each of them are going to go back to school and live their best life. Tully is going to now have a faculty member he jibes with and who, would be there for him in a way that no one at that school or any school he's been at will be that for him. Walleye, you feel as a viewer, is going to take some of the lessons learned with Tully and some of the advice on connecting his lesson plans with actual interesting things like he showed him in Boston and
Mhm.
personal stories, and that both of their lots in life will improve at this school and after this school. Instead, they are both called into the dean's office and they have to answer for their field trip because Tully's parents are there. And it turns out they found out about the trip to the asylum to see Tully's father. Long story short, Walleye jumps on the grenade.
They were almost relieved. They were like, "We know how manipulative he is. Just go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say he
Hmm.
manipulated he tricked you into bringing him there."
They can't wait
Um,
to put him in military
yeah.
school.
And instead, Paul Hunnam says, "It was me. I convinced him. I
Yeah,
told him, you have to go see your father." So he's not trying to save a kid from going to a school he doesn't want to go to. From everything else we've learned in this movie, he's quite likely saving this kid's life. They send this kid to military school, so he does a semester or two, gets sent directly to Vietnam. They're like, "We need young men with any military training whatsoever.
right.
We'll hit these military schools, we'll take these." That's what happens.
Yeah,
So he's saving him from the fate of Mary Lamb's son
it's
in a
true.
way. Yeah.
It's a great moment of standing up for himself and breaking free of this school. And Paul Hunnam delivers what is my favorite line in the entire film. I'm going to try to get it straight. He says to Hardy, which is the guy who runs the school now, who was a former student of his, "Hardy, I have known you since you were a boy. So I think I have the requisite experience and insight to aver that you are and have always been penis cancer in human form."
That's it. I think that's exactly it.
Uh, he's arrived in the new world of who he
Mhm.
is, and he's burning the ships. So there's no
Yeah.
return to this school. It's fantastic. And Hunnam's office looks so sad when empty. It was once crammed with books. He was there, his desk, smoking a pipe, and then it's empty. He's moving out. He's now one of those teachers, one that Tully will never forget, but we hope we'll keep in touch with, like even more than that. And we'll be there
Mhm.
for him, and they'll be kind of writing letters back and forth, you kind of picture.
Yeah,
Dave, I've always felt the best families are the ones you pick yourself.
absolutely.
They're family now. One of the great things I love about this film is that it's imbued with that kind of subtext. Even though these three main characters are thrown together, they turn out to be exactly what each other needed.
I always scoff when someone says like, "That's your family, man. That blood is thicker than water." All that stuff. And it's not based on my family. I'm quite happy with my family. Um, when someone says like, "That's your brother," you have to. That's your dad. I always go because
Yeah.
I know so many people who are so much better off with the family they pieced together after the fact
Hmm.
than they are with the family they were born into. It's just not a reasonable thing to think that, oh, yeah, everybody's born into the person that they should be utterly
Hmm.
loyal to. That's just not the
Yeah.
way it works.
And at the end, the line they each say to each other is, "See ya." See ya. Perfect ending line for both of them to each other because it's a throwaway. And it's something a tough guy says when he doesn't give a shit. But it's
Yeah.
masking a true intent, which is, I hope I
Mm.
see you. I want
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
you again. Keep in touch. See ya. Ah, it's a
Yeah.
great moment.
It is great.
He almost is in tears, Walleye. Just,
Oh, he's not, but he's
he's
almost in
not, but he
tears.
almost is. It's
He's
beautiful.
almost in tears, and Tully turns, and he's a little late at this point,
Right.
and he runs.
You feel like he's
Oh,
tearing up when he runs, probably, and we don't know.
I feel like the run reminds me that, like, oh, he's just a kid running off to
Oh, yeah, it's
class.
such
Like,
a gangly, awkward
it's
run.
yeah, it's a serial run to class.
A little
And
breaking away.
a little breaking away reference. He's a kid again, as massive a change as this is for Paul Hunnam, his teacher. For him, school-wise, at this point, I'm late for class. Like, I have my whole life ahead of me, and this is amazing what happened, and it definitely moved me forward a lot, but I'm late for class. Like,
Right.
life goes on. Here we go.
And he's late for a class, and he's running to get there.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
he's going to apply himself in a way he never did before. He's going to see those classes differently.
That's a good point. Yeah, he's not shuffling like, "I don't care if I'm late, let him kick me out."
Hmm. He even makes
He's
a
he
joke. He makes a joke. He's like, "Well, fifth period is, art
phys
or
ed.
or a gym or something, phys
Yeah,
ed. So if you want to run for a beer and a burger over at the joint," and,
yeah.
and he's like, "Well, I figured, you're fired now, so what's the difference?" And he's like, "Your logic is flawless as always,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
no." I could see it where I could be your best bet, but no. Like
yeah. They're
it's genius.
yeah, and they're
Um,
officially buddies. Like, they're
they
officially
are.
buddies.
They
Yeah, it's
are.
nice. It's super nice.
So, in closing, I'm just going to say of this film what I kind of said of Wonder Boys, and it's the way I feel about the Royal Tenenbaums. This is one of those films where when it ends, you feel like you read a great book. It sticks to your ribs.
Yeah.
It's something that's really satisfying. It's going to last you. And it's not the kind of thing where, like, all right, let me pop in another movie. It's rewarding.
I would say things about this movie and the movies you just mentioned that I would normally only say about books. Uh, like, I would feel like I was talking about a book if I said, in your life, you probably never befriend your weird, smelly teacher. But if you were to, you might feel differently about the next weird, smelly guy you meet.
Mm,
And I've always said this about books, and I've never said it about movies, but I'm starting to. This is a shortcut to understanding the people you meet in your life, to have patience for a Tully, to be more accepting of a Paul Hunnam. You can get that from films.
mhm. Yeah, like what you're talking about, a lot of the problems in this world stem from people sticking with their own kind, from people not mixing, from people not crossing the aisle and seeing what the other person is like.
It's a
Yeah.
shortcut to walking in another man's moccasins.
Mm,
Like, it puts you there so that you can be more thoughtful about it if you ever wind up there, or if you see someone who has wound up there.
mhm. Plus, that was just a wonderful callback to the footwear of the Cheyenne.
God, no one
uh,
but Paul Giamatti just like,
he's
he
genius.
just
He's
crushed it.
genius.
He crushed it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, Dave.
Thank you for having me, Hollis.
I will see you at the Players Ball.
See you there, baby.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.